Okay, welcome back to another episode of Go Ask Your Brother. And before we jump in, I just want to say thank you. We are up to over 200, in fact, like 208 subscribers and something like 35,000 views, which is incredible because this was originally just a goofy thing that I was doing for my brother in Milwaukee and his buddy Kelp to help him learn Cubase better. And now we're doing all of this. And I've said this before. I recognize like 208 subscribers is not a huge deal in the world of YouTube, nor is 35,000 views. Um, but it is for me. That's awesome. And so in the last couple of months here, I want to say thank you to Merrick Minarik, Felix Deadcat. Thank you for having an easy to pronounce screen name. Dylan Ost Aviano Media. Avia. In the U.S., you don't see two V's next to each other often, so I'll apologize in advance. Ave Roslander, Frankopoulos, and Thomas. Thomas is probably from Sweden. There's several J's and G's. Lundgren, Thomas Lundgren, and of course Victor Vossen, who's been a very active contributor here for quite some time. Stanton Greaves, and probably at least 150 others that I'm not taking time to mention by name. But thank you all for being here, for liking, for watching, subscribing. That's awesome. So I apologize. It's been a long time since I've posted anything. Been crazy busy, and I wanted to try and come up with something today that would be that would actually have some real hardcore value. And one of the things that seems to come up sooner or later for everybody is missing files or missing components. So we're going to look at, we're calling today's episode Lost and Found, and we're going to look at how to, why that happens and then how to solve it. So let's look at, we'll open Cubase 9, which is very cool, by the way. If you haven't upgraded to 9, you should do it immediately. And I'm going to open the, I've got several folders on the desktop here. We've got Lost and Found, Super Black Hole, and then this Audio 0201 wave that's just kind of sitting there. That's all going to be relevant in a second. Let me open the project folder for Lost and Found and open the Lost and Found project file and have it load everything up, and hopefully it's going to be missing something. So it's missing this Audio 0201 wave, and we'll come back to that in just a second. All right, so here we have our Cubase 9 project, and you know, as long as we're here, let me give you just a real quick tour. One of the most significant changes is they've added these zone areas to the project window. So if this was your traditional project window, you can now open a left zone, right zone, and lower zone, and you can even come in and engage the transport zone. And now jump back over here. You've got a mix console that's sort of docked to the bottom of the project window. You've got your VST instruments and media bay over to the right, and your various inspectors and stuff to the left. But even more salient than that is that at the bottom here you can change the mix, this lower zone from the mix console to the editor for whatever you have selected. Of course, chord pads, and then sampler control for the brand new sampler track, which we will totally get into later. But in any case, this is just a silly project it's a drum loop and some silly synth strings and stuff, and then some track pictures that we dropped in here of, actually, since this is called Go Ask Your Brother, let me, how to make that bigger. That's actually my brother, Carter, there in Milwaukee, who sort of is the genesis of this whole thing. My point here is that after you have all this, so we've got some audio going on, there's some MIDI data, we've got track pictures and so forth. The only thing that we haven't been is online for 15 minutes, which I'll explain in a second. So I'm going to close this project. We'll hit save. And what I want to do is look at, let's back all the way out to the desktop. Let's look at the project folder called Lost and Found, which is what I'm calling this project. If you open the project folder, you'll see there's a bunch of stuff in here, you have an audio subfolder with all these WAV files. Then you have an edits folder. You have images and all these .peak files. There's the actual project file itself, the .cpr file. You've got this image cache, and then track pictures for all of the either factory or user pictures that you've assigned to different tracks. When you, all right, so here's the first big takeaway. When you're copying or backing up or moving or sending your Cubase project, here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to just send this, the .cpr file. And it's amazing how many people do that. And it is understandable, because if you look at a lot of other less complicated programs like Microsoft Word, you launch Microsoft Word or the Apple Pages, you create a single file, a .doc, a document file, and that's all there is. Everything that has to do with that file is contained within that .doc file. So you can take that one thing and send it around the internet. You can email it to friends. You can copy it to a hard drive, whatever, and you're done. It's everything goes with it. That is not the case with a Cubase project. And I guess off the top of my head, the easiest analogy that I can come up with is don't focus on the .cpr file. Focus on the project folder that holds all of that other stuff. So, and the goofy analogy here is, if you think about building a model, like a model airplane or like a model car. So you go to Hobby Lobby or Tower Hobbies or whatever, and you buy a model airplane kit. You get a box, and you take it home, and you open the box, and the first thing you're going to take out are instructions that say, here's what to do with all the balsa wood and plastic and glue that's in this box. All right, so those instructions, which are vital but kind of useless by themselves, those instructions are basically the equivalent of this .cpr file. In the Cubase project file itself, it knows what you called it. It's got the MIDI data. It's got a lot, the project tempo, length, all of the information about the project. It's got the instructions, but it doesn't have the actual stuff. So if you move that without the rest of the stuff, you're going to get all kinds of missing files. That would be sort of like taking the instructions for the model airplane and none of the parts. So if you back out here to this level, the project folder, think of that as the box you brought home from the hobby store or from the whatever. That's the project folder is the container that has everything in it. So if you're going to back it up, if you're going to save it, if you're going to move it, you have to move at that level. You've got to take the box and everything in it. If you start moving individual pieces, then stuff gets screwed up. Now, where that, and let me demonstrate that for a second. So, well, actually, one of the things that we did ahead of time here, this Audio 201 wave, right? That's part of my Lost and Found project, but I intentionally took it out of the audio folder and pulled it out on the desktop. And let's take this one too, strings.wave, and we'll pull it out there. And now, if we go back to Cubase, oops, sorry. Bear with me for a second while I quit that. Very cool, by the way. If you haven't invested in Halion 4, you totally should. It's an awesome program. But all right, let's go to lostandfound.cpr. We'll open that program file, and we should get at least two missing things now. So it's got two. It's asking you to resolve missing files. This first one is the one we saw previously, that Audio 0201 wave, and the one called strings. Now, here's the funny part. We're inclined to think of computers as being really smart, and you would think in this day and age of searching and virtual reality intelligence stuff that it would be smart enough to figure out they're sitting right here. So the two missing files, audio 201 and strings.wave, that's these two things. And what's going on here is it's making the system look dumber than it really is. Because when you go to open that project file, all it knows to do is go back to the last location from which it retrieved this stuff and get it again. And it said, hey, whoa, wait a minute. This stuff isn't here. There's nothing in the system to say, when this happens, start looking around on your own. It just stops. It gives you this dialogue and then asks you, what would you like to do? You have options here to locate it, to point it at a different folder to search in. Let's see, locate. It'll start searching from the documents folder in this case, which is, it'll search from whatever you tell it to, but that's a dumb place to start. You can open an auto search function here, or you can just say, ignore that. It's not an issue. So we'll get to how this happens in a minute, but whether you choose locate, folder, or search really comes down to how certain you are about the file's location. So if you know, excuse me, if you know exactly where this stuff is, as we do in this case, you can simply say, oh, let's locate that. And I'm going to point you at the desktop, and then we can find that. Yep, there it is. Open that, and presto, we've got everything we need. Now, let me close all that, close that project up again. Now that we've told it where it is, we can open that project again. Let's see. Yeah, there's no open. Let me open that again. And we shouldn't have any missing stuff. Oh, we do. Look at that. All right, so we can locate audio 201. All right, and say OK. And let's close that and reopen it. Wow, see, this is why I shouldn't go to Las Vegas, because I would have bet you money that after you found it once, it would have remembered that for next time, but it didn't. So our other options to find this are to use the folder tool or the search tool, depending on how you wanted, how certain you are of where it may be. If you have no clue, I guess you go all the way out to the search level. If you think I have a pretty good idea where it is, at least at what folder, try that one more time. All right, so I can go to the folder level, set that to desktop and say open, and it found everything that time. All right, so that's what's the problem there is driven by the fact that you moved different component parts. And the way I've got this set up right now is a little bit artificial. So let's all right, let's do one more thing here. Let's take those two tracks, or those two files, excuse me. Let's move them back into the appropriate audio folder here. And let's open Lost and Found one more time. And I think we should get no missing. Wow, really? All right, so let's come back here and locate that. Locate file 0201, yep. Okay, so now it has everything. how this gets to be a problem in the first place is if you use this setting. If we go File, New Project, or I guess we could just go to Hub, open the Hub. If you use this, the default location, that's where you can get into trouble. If you select the option for default location, it's gonna drive you to, let's see what, your username, music, Cubase projects, untitled, and then it's gonna dump everything into that one massive project file. And as long as you never need to move anything, you never need to back anything up, you never delete anything, I guess that's fine. But the problem is, if you're constantly using the default location, then all of your audio tracks, all of your edits, all of your MIDI data is essentially being piled into a junk drawer. And thankfully, everything's tagged with its own unique reference number so that when you open each of those projects, even though there's a massive basket with 500 tracks in there called Vocal 1 or Guitar or whatever, Cubase can sort through and find out which one to load for which project. If you move anything or delete anything, stuff gets screwed up in a hurry. So the way to, there's two things that I want to share with you. One is, whenever you do this new project, and let's just select empty, you always want to use the option prompt for project location and say create, and then it's going to ask you to set up a new discrete project folder for each Cubase project you create. And within that will be all the audio, the edits, the images, the track pictures, everything. So all you need to do at that point, hide this, is move that one project folder. I can take this project folder with all of the stuff that it requires. I can copy it, I can compress it and email it, I can move it to an external hard drive. All of the component pieces will go with it. If you're using the default location, instead of having an audio folder with just stuff for this project, you'll have an audio folder with like X to the 10th power .wav files, and it's a very, very difficult process to pick through all that, because like I say, it's an enormous digital junk drawer. So lesson one, always use the prompt for project location, create a discrete project folder each time you create a new Cubase project. Now, if you're in the situation that I described where you've used the default location and you've got 15 or 20 or 1,500 Cubase projects all dumped into the same default location, there's still an easy way out. So let's open our project again here. And let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that this project was saved into a massive default location along with 600 other Cubase projects. And now, for whatever reason, this one's special. It's the next great American pop hit, or it's the one you need to share with a colleague or whatever. And now you're faced with the situation of, literally, if you've been using the same default location for a couple of years, you could have hundreds or thousands of Cubase projects all stuffed into that same place. And if you're in the habit of, like most of us are, you name each time you perform a keys track, you call it keys, or a vocal track, you call it Vox 1, Vox 2, or GTR 1 or GTR 2 for guitars. The odds of going through manually and parsing out what's what and selecting it's just almost impossible. But it's okay. They've built in a way to do that automatically. So you open your project from the great junk drawer location. And you have it up and it's playing and everything's right. Now, what you want to do is take this and only this, package it up, and move it to a discrete location. There's an option here called Backup Project. And when you open this, the first thing that's going to do is ask you to set the project folder. So let's set the new project folder to the desktop. We'll call it a new folder, and we'll call it Backup Drill. Okay. And then we'll hit open. And now it's going to ask us, what do you want to back up? The first thing it's going to say is the project name. Let's call this Lost and Found 2. Do you want to keep the current project active? Sure, fine, that's fine. Minimize audio files. Freeze edits, remove unused, and don't back up video. These are all options that allow you to sort of scrub off the unused stuff, which is good if you want to sort of, if you know for sure you're done with the unused stuff and it's actually garbage, because it'll make your resulting file size a little smaller, but it can also limit your options. So let me hit cancel for just a second. So on this strings part here, if we had decided to edit this, and we'll just crop this back to that bar, for example, which is what, 7.5. And now if we back up the project at this point, everything in that WAV file from that point to the end is considered unused. So if I crop this back and then back this up and say, delete unused audio, it's going to physically remove the back half of that waveform from the pool. And in my backed up project, I can't uncrop that. That would be it. It would truncate it to that point. So if you wanted to keep the maximum number of editing options open on down the road, you wouldn't want to do that. So let me go back to the backup file, backup project. Go to the desktop. And what do we call it? Backup drill. We've already created the project folder, so we'll say, yeah, fine. We'll put it there. We'll call it Lost and Found 2. I'll keep the current project active. I'm not going to minimize audio files, so all the various versions will remain. I won't freeze any edits. And freeze edits, again, if you'd made EQ changes or reverb changes, it's going to lock that in. You would click these if you're 100% sure that the changes you've made are the changes you want to keep, and let's minimize the file size on the back end. I'm 100% confident all that stuff's junk. If you're not, and if you truly want to, in this situation, let's say you just want to pull this thing out of the swamp and put it somewhere you can continue to work on it, you would want to uncheck all of those. You'll have a larger file size. The project folder will be bigger, but you'll have all the stuff there to work with. And you hit OK, and then it does its thing. And we can close this, and now close all that up. We come over here to the backup drill folder, open that, and you'll see that it has an audio folder with all our stuff. It's got all of the edits. It has our images. And these the peak files, the .peak, what those are is actually the waveform that you see in the project window. So like you're recording and you see the waveform as you're recording, it draws it across there. That little graphic element is a peak file, and that's what all of these represent. Of course, we've got our actual project file itself, the graphics cache, and then our track pictures have come over. The whole thing, everything's there. So in this case, if we had the 600 projects tethered together in the great tar pit of the default location. By using the backup project command, we've picked all that stuff up and we've copied it to a fresh, clean, isolated project folder called, in this case, backup drill. And now this we can take and we can copy, we can move, we can send to an external hard drive, and it'll take everything it needs and nothing it doesn't along with it. So along those lines, and I know this is getting to be a long video, but I just want to share one other thing with you here on the whole lost and found deal. And I apologize, this is going to be for Mac users, obviously. If you want to move this thing via Dropbox or Google Drive or any of those file sharing protocols out there, if you try to move just the folder, it may or may not work because there's so much other stuff inside that. The safest thing to do is to right click on this and say compress the folder backup drill. And and you'll end up with the zip file. Now here's the thing, the word compress suggests that you're going to make this a lot smaller. If we right click on this and say get info, we'll see that backup drill as a whole, this contains 29.2 megabytes of information. If we do that same thing, say get info on its compressed version, you'll see that, okay, it squeezed it a little. It's down to 20.7, but it's not a lot smaller. And the reason for that is that when you run that compression, when you do that compress backup drill, yes, it is shrinking the file size a little, but more importantly, it's containerizing everything in this .zip format. The real reason you want to compress that isn't really to make it smaller. It's to glue it all together so that you've created one object, a zip file that you can now send via Dropbox, email, you name it, whatever, Google Drive, InfoShare, FileZilla, it doesn't matter. You've taken all of those component parts, the peak files, the track pictures, all of the audio, the MIDI, all that stuff, right? It's all glued together now into this one easy to handle zip file. And it can be sent off safely. It's almost like, if this was your family scrapbook with all the little pictures and delicate stuff, by compressing it, what you've done is set it in a UPS box and put that fiberglass tape around it and said, okay, here, you can put it on an airplane, you can throw it on a truck, you can give it to a kid to run down the driveway. And after you unzip it, you take that fiberglass tape off in that big ugly cardboard box. Inside is all of the, that's the family scrapbook again. So the real point to compressing something isn't to make it smaller, it's to consolidate it so that it's easy to transport. So if your goal here is to take a project, if you look around and you go, oh my goodness, for 2 years I've been using the default location and everything's a big soupy mess, that's okay. Open the project, back up the project to a discrete location like we just did, call it whatever you want. I recommend that you don't minimize or remove anything. Take the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, move it to a discrete location. And at that point, if all you're doing is moving it off your main computer to an external hard drive, you can drag that over and it'll move just fine. You don't really need to compress it before doing that. But if you're going to send it off your system to a cloud solution of any kind or to a collaborator, compress it into a zip file and then send it. And for Windows users, that same move, when you right-click on the project file, instead of a menu that says compress, you're going to get a menu that says send to, and then an option to send to a compressed file. And it'll do the same thing. So you go right-click, send to compressed file, and execute or enter, and you'll get a .zip file somewhere on the desktop, and then that's the thing you want to work with. So I know this is one of the longest, I think one of the longest presentations that we've done, but hopefully that's helpful. both in terms of trying to find missing files, resolve conflicts, and then to clean up, consolidate, and efficiently move your project files around without losing anything in the process. So I hope that helps. Again, thank you everybody for watching and subscribing and liking, and please keep the comments and suggestions and all that good feedback coming, and we'll try to get a few more videos out to you sooner than later, and we'll see you back here next time. Thanks a whole lot. Bye-bye.